The orphanage on Station Kepler 9 floated in the darkness between stars, a massive cylinder of metal and hope spinning slowly to create gravity. Inside its cramped corridors lived over 300 children from 70 different species across the galaxy. There were young insectoid clictors who made nests in the ventilation shafts, furry Bolthorians who needed special cold rooms to sleep in, and even a pair of methane-breathing Grenthals who lived in their own sealed habitat. But among all these alien children, only one was human. The boy's name was Cole, though he hadn't been born with that name. Nobody knew what his real name was. 15 years ago, the station's sensors had picked up an emergency beacon from a drifting escape pod. Inside, wrapped in a strange blanket covered with symbols nobody could read, was a newborn human baby. No ship wreckage nearby. No distress calls. No records in any database. Just a child with the most unusual eyes anyone had ever seen, eyes that glowed like molten gold even in the dark. The matrons who ran the orphanage had seen a lot in their years, but they'd never seen anything like those eyes. At first, they thought it might be some kind of birth defect or human genetic condition. Humans were rare out here in Council space, and most people only knew them from stories and broadcasts. But the doctors checked Cole over and found nothing wrong. His eyes simply were that way, beautiful and unsettling at the same time. Growing up, Cole learned quickly that being different wasn't always good. The other children whispered about him. Some of the alien kids said his eyes meant he was cursed, or that he was some kind of ghost. Others just avoided him because he made them uncomfortable. Cole spent most of his childhood alone, reading old data files in the station library, learning everything he could about the galaxy that had somehow lost track of his parents. But as he got older, people started noticing other things about Cole that were even stranger than his golden eyes. When he was 7, during a history lesson about the ancient civilizations, he suddenly started speaking in a language that made the teacher's translator implant screech and shut down. Later, when linguists examined the recording, they identified it as Old Varati, a dead language that hadn't been spoken in over 20,000 years. Cole had no memory of learning it. The words had just come out of his mouth. At 12, Cole was helping in the station's gardens when a support cable snapped and came whipping down toward a group of smaller children. Without thinking, Cole moved. Later, when people watched the security footage, they couldn't understand what they were seeing. Cole shouldn't have been able to cross that distance that fast. He shouldn't have been strong enough to catch a cable that weighed over 200 pounds. But he had done both, saving 3 lives before the cable even hit the ground. The incidents kept happening. Cole would know things he shouldn't know. He could tell when people were lying just by looking at them. He picked up new languages after hearing them only once or twice. When he turned 15 and started helping with the younger kids, he somehow knew exactly what each child needed, whether they were human or alien, whether they communicated through sound, light, or chemical signals. That same year, pirates hit the station. They were a ragged crew looking for easy targets, and our orphanage seemed perfect. They blasted through an airlock and stormed in with weapons drawn, screaming demands for valuables and supplies. Cole had been in the main hall with 24 young children when 3 pirates burst through the door. What happened next would change everything. Cole didn't think. He just moved. He grabbed a broken piece of pipe from some nearby repairs and went at them. The security cameras caught it all, and later, experts would watch the footage hundreds of times trying to understand what they were seeing. Cole moved like water, like he knew where the pirates would aim before they pulled their triggers. He disarmed all 3 in under 10 seconds, leaving them unconscious on the floor without firing a single shot. Station security arrived to find a 17-year-old human standing calmly among 3 armed pirates who looked like they'd been hit by a tactical team. The head of security, a grizzled Bolthorian named Grex, just stared at Cole with all 4 of his eyes wide. In 30 years of security work, Grex had never seen anything like it. That's when the reports started flowing to the Galactic Council. Just routine incident reports at first, but someone in the massive bureaucracy noticed a pattern. A human child with golden eyes and impossible abilities on a nowhere station in the outer sectors. The file landed on the desk of Council Representative Julie Norton, a human who'd climbed the ranks to become one of the few of her species in Council leadership. Julie read the reports 3 times, her coffee getting cold on her desk. She pulled up the old records from 15 years ago, reading about the mysterious escape pod and the baby with no past. Then she made some calls to people who owed her favors, people who had access to databases that weren't supposed to exist. What she found made her blood run cold. There were gaps in the records, places where data had been deliberately erased. Someone had wanted this child's origins hidden, and they'd been thorough about it. She authorized a quiet investigation, nothing official, just some discreet inquiries. But the more her people dug, the less they found. It was like Cole had appeared out of nowhere, a ghost made flesh. The only physical evidence was that blanket he'd been wrapped in, still kept in the orphanage storage. Julie had it sent to the council's main facility for analysis. The symbols on the blanket didn't match anything in the public databases. They were old, incredibly old, but nobody could say exactly what they meant or what language they came from. Julie filed her report and marked it for future investigation, thinking it was just another unsolved mystery in a galaxy full of them. She had no idea that in a few months, those symbols would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. She had no idea that the quiet human boy with golden eyes was about to become the most important person in the galaxy. And she definitely had no idea that by opening this investigation, she'd set in motion events that would force the Council to confront secrets they'd been hiding for 3 million years. Back on Station Kepler 9, Cole went about his simple life, unaware that eyes from across the galaxy were now watching him. He helped in the gardens, taught the younger kids how to read, and dreamed about maybe joining the Council someday, seeing the galaxy, finding a place where he belonged. The golden eyes that had marked him as different since birth gleamed in the station's artificial light, carrying secrets even he didn't know yet. Cole's 18th birthday came and went without much celebration, just a small cake in the orphanage cafeteria and some handmade cards from the younger kids. But that birthday marked something important. He was officially an adult now, which meant he could leave the station and make his own way in the galaxy. The problem was, he had no idea what that way should be. The matrons had been good to him, but they'd made it clear that the orphanage couldn't support him forever. He needed to find work, find a purpose. Cole spent weeks scrolling through job postings on the Galactic Network, looking at everything from cargo hauler to station maintenance, but nothing felt right. Then one day, he saw a posting that made him stop scrolling. The Galactic Council was accepting applications for their Diplomatic Corps training program. The Diplomatic Corps was legendary. They were the people who went to new worlds, who negotiated treaties, who stopped wars before they started. It was dangerous work and incredibly competitive. Thousands applied every year, and only a handful got accepted. But something about it called to Cole. Maybe it was the chance to finally understand the galaxy that had abandoned him. Maybe it was the hope that somewhere out there, in all those worlds and civilizations, he'd find answers about who he really was. He applied, not expecting much. 2 weeks later, he got a message that still made his hands shake when he thought about it. He'd been accepted. Not just accepted, but fast-tracked. They wanted him to report to the training facility on Council Prime Station in 1 month. The training was harder than anything Cole had ever experienced. 23 students from 18 different species, all competing to prove themselves worthy. They studied xenobiology, learning the intricate details of how different species thought and communicated. They practiced negotiation, running simulations of first contact scenarios and trade disputes. They learned combat, because sometimes diplomacy failed and you needed to survive long enough to try again. But Cole noticed something strange happening. Things that should have been difficult for him were almost easy. When they studied the Quillian species, whose emotions were expressed through color changes in their skin, Cole just knew what each shade meant. He didn't memorize it from the textbook. He looked at a Quillian and understood what they were feeling, like reading words on a page. It happened with every species. The Draconians who communicated partly through pheromones. The singers whose language was based on musical tones. The deep-born who used bioluminescent patterns. Cole could read them all, and his instructors started looking at him with a mixture of awe and confusion. One of them, an old veteran named Instructor Hayes, pulled him aside after class one day. "How are you doing this?" Hayes asked, his weathered face creased with concern. "I've been teaching this course for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone pick up xenopsychology this fast. It takes most students years to read even one alien species accurately. You're doing it with all of them in weeks." Cole didn't have an answer. He just shrugged and said it felt natural, like remembering something he'd forgotten rather than learning something new. Hayes looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head and walked away. But Cole noticed that after that conversation, his test scores started getting flagged for review. People were watching him again, just like they had on the orphanage station. 3 months into training, Cole's class was sent on their first real assignment. It was supposed to be a simple diplomatic mission to the Ashtam Collective, a reclusive species that rarely interacted with the Council. The Ashtam had recently discovered a new mineral deposit on one of their moons, and the Council wanted to negotiate mining rights. Cole's class would observe the negotiations as part of their education. The Ashtam homeworld was beautiful in a harsh way, all red sand and towering crystal formations that sang in the wind. The Ashtam themselves were tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed with an inner light. They greeted the diplomatic team formally but coldly, making it clear that outsiders weren't really welcome. The negotiations took place in an ancient temple carved into the side of a mountain. The main chamber was enormous, with walls covered in carvings that depicted the Ashtam's history going back thousands of years. At the center of the chamber stood an obelisk, maybe 20 feet tall, made of some black material that seemed to absorb light. The Ashtam negotiator explained that it was a sacred object, left by the ancestors, and that no outsider had ever been permitted to touch it. Cole should have listened. He should have stayed with his group and focused on observing the negotiations. But something about that obelisk pulled at him. It was like a voice in his head that wasn't quite a voice, more like a feeling, a certainty that he needed to go to it. His feet were moving before he realized what he was doing. The chamber went silent as Cole walked toward the obelisk. Instructor Hayes called his name, voice sharp with alarm. The Ashtam negotiator made a sound like grinding stone, which Cole's translator rendered as a cry of warning. But Cole couldn't stop. He reached out and placed his palm flat against the black surface. The obelisk exploded with light. Not metaphorically, but actually exploded, brilliant white light that filled the entire chamber and sent everyone stumbling backward, shielding their eyes. Cole stood at the center of it, his hands still on the surface, and he could see things. Star maps scrolled across his vision, showing systems he'd never heard of. Technical schematics appeared, designs for weapons and ships that looked nothing like current technology. And words, thousands of words in dozens of languages, pouring into his mind so fast it should have hurt but somehow didn't. The light faded after maybe 10 seconds, though it felt like hours to Cole. He staggered backward, his golden eyes blazing even brighter than usual. The chamber was completely silent. Then the Ashtam started making sounds that the translators couldn't process, harsh and reverent at the same time. One by one, they dropped to their knees, their glowing eyes fixed on Cole. The Ashtam negotiator approached slowly, moving like he was afraid. When he spoke, his voice shook. "Scion," he said, and the translator rendered the word with a dozen different possible meanings, none of them good. "Firstborn's blood. The old text spoke of your return, but we did not believe." Cole tried to say he didn't understand, that there must be some mistake, but the Ashtam weren't listening. They were all kneeling now, all of them focused on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. The negotiator spoke again, faster now, words tumbling over each other. "We cannot allow this knowledge to spread. The compact must be maintained. You should not exist. We must seal our borders. The council must not know what you are." Within an hour, the Ashtam had politely but firmly escorted the entire diplomatic team off their planet. They sealed their borders completely, cutting off all communication with the council. And they sent one message to Council Prime, encrypted and marked urgent: "The Scion has awakened. The ancient bloodline lives. We withdraw from the compact until the council can guarantee containment." Cole sat in the transport back to Council Prime, his classmates shooting him nervous glances, none of them willing to sit next to him. His hand still tingled where he'd touched the obelisk. Instructor Hayes was on a private comm with someone, his voice low and urgent. Cole caught fragments: unprecedented response, security concern, need immediate analysis. When they landed on Council Prime, Cole wasn't taken back to the training facility. Instead, security officers in full armor escorted him to a section of the station he'd never seen before, deep in the administrative levels where the real power of the council resided. They put him in a comfortable room, not quite a cell but not quite guest quarters either, and told him to wait. Through the door, he could hear raised voices. Arguments. His name being repeated over and over. And one phrase that made his blood run cold: potential threat to galactic stability. Cole sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands, the same hands that had made an ancient alien artifact come to life after 10,000 years of silence. His golden eyes reflected back at him from a mirror on the wall, and for the first time in his life, he wondered if maybe being different wasn't just unusual. Maybe it was dangerous. Maybe the galaxy had been right to abandon him after all. Cole spent 3 days in that room before anyone explained what was happening. They brought him meals, fresh clothes, and stacks of old books to read, but no answers. He could hear activity outside his door at all hours, footsteps rushing past, muffled conversations that stopped when they got too close. Whatever was going on, it was big, and he was at the center of it. On the 4th day, the door finally opened. A woman walked in, human like him, maybe in her 50s with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that looked tired. She introduced herself as Council Representative Julie Norton, and Cole recognized the name immediately. She was one of the highest-ranking humans in the entire galactic government, someone who normally dealt with planetary disputes and trade agreements, not confused students from the diplomatic corps. Julie sat down across from him and didn't waste time with small talk. Cole, I need you to tell me everything you remember about your parents. Anything at all, even if it seems insignificant. Cole felt something twist in his chest. I don't remember anything. I was a baby when they left me. You know that. It's all in my file. I know what's in your file, Julie said quietly. But files can be incomplete. Sometimes people remember things they don't realize they remember. Dreams, maybe. Feelings. Anything unusual. Cole wanted to say no, to tell her there was nothing. But that would have been a lie, and somehow he knew she'd catch the lie. So instead, he told her about the dreams. They'd started about a year ago, strange vivid dreams that didn't feel like normal dreams. In them, he saw places he'd never been, vast cities of crystal and light, ships the size of moons moving between stars. And sometimes he saw people, tall and graceful, with eyes that glowed like his own. They spoke to him in languages he didn't know, but somehow he understood them anyway. Julie listened without interrupting, her face carefully neutral. When he finished, she pulled out a tablet and showed him an image. It was the blanket he'd been wrapped in as a baby, the one with all those strange symbols. Do these mean anything to you now? Can you read them? Cole stared at the symbols, and something shifted in his mind. It was like his brain suddenly remembered how to do something it had always known. The symbols weren't just decoration. They were words, a genealogical record, a family tree that stretched back impossibly far. And at the end of that tree, his name, written in characters that hurt to look at too long. It's a bloodline, he whispered. A royal bloodline. But that's impossible. My parents were nobody. They left me in an escape pod. Julie's expression finally cracked, showing something like pain. Your parents weren't nobody, Cole. They were two of the most brilliant researchers in the galaxy, and they died protecting you. She took a breath. Their names were Michael and Rebecca Chen. They spent 15 years searching for something that most people thought was just a myth. They were looking for proof that the progenitors were real. The name hit Cole like a physical blow. The progenitors. He'd read about them in ancient history files, the mythical race that supposedly created all the major civilizations in the galaxy 3 million years ago before vanishing without a trace. Most serious scholars thought they were just stories, explanations that primitive cultures invented to make sense of their own existence. They found proof, Julie continued. Not just proof, but something the Council has been hiding for over 1,000 years. The progenitors didn't vanish, Cole. They integrated. They seeded their genetic material into dozens of developing species across the galaxy, guiding evolution from the inside. Over millions of years, that genetic heritage diluted into nothing, just background noise in the DNA of 1 billion different beings. She pulled up another image on her tablet, a complex genetic chart that Cole couldn't fully understand. Your parents discovered that the progenitor genes weren't really gone. They were dormant, scattered across the galaxy in tiny fragments. And they found something else, something in an ancient vault on a dead world. A prophecy, if you want to call it that. A warning left by the last progenitor emperor. Cole's hands were shaking now. What kind of warning? That the enemy would return, Julie said. The progenitors didn't fragment themselves randomly. They did it to fight something, an extra-dimensional species they called the Voidborn. The fragmentation was a weapon, a way to create biological diversity so extreme that the Voidborn couldn't adapt to it. But the prophecy said that one day, the Voidborn would return, and when they did, the scattered bloodlines would need to be reunited. She looked at him with something like sympathy. Your parents spent years tracking down people who carried dormant progenitor genes. They found each other, two humans who each carried fragments of the ancient bloodline. And then they did something that was probably illegal in every system in the galaxy. They used genetic manipulation to combine their DNA, to concentrate those dormant genes, to create a child who would carry an almost pure progenitor genetic sequence. They created me, Cole said, and it wasn't a question. They created you, Julie confirmed. And then they ran, because they knew that if the Council found out what they'd done, they'd either destroy you or try to use you. The Council has spent centuries making sure that no single species or individual could claim dominance over the others. A living progenitor would shatter that balance. Your parents gave their lives buying time for you to escape, fighting off Council security forces while your escape pod jumped to safety. Cole stood up, pacing the small room, trying to process what he was hearing. So what am I? Some kind of weapon? A science experiment? You're their son, Julie said firmly. And you're the only thing that might save us when the Voidborn return. If they return. You said if, Cole noticed. You're not sure they're coming back. Julie hesitated, and Cole saw fear flash across her face. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something at the edge of the galaxy. Spatial anomalies that match descriptions in progenitor records of Voidborn incursion points. The Council's top scientists are analyzing the data now, but Cole, if those records are accurate, we have maybe 6 months before they arrive. And every weapon we have, every defense system, every piece of technology we've developed over thousands of years, it won't matter. The Voidborn don't just destroy civilizations. They consume them, break them down to base matter and absorb it. She stood up and moved closer to him. That's why I'm telling you all this. Because the Grand Executor has called an emergency session to discuss you. Half the Council wants to study you, figure out how to use your abilities. The other half wants you locked away where you can't threaten their power structure. And a very small group, which includes me, thinks you might be exactly what your parents intended. A failsafe. A living key to progenitor technology that could actually fight the Voidborn. Cole felt like the room was spinning. I don't know how to fight anything. I don't know how to use ancient technology. I'm just a kid from an orphanage who happens to have weird eyes. Those aren't just weird eyes, Julie said. They are a marker, a sign of active progenitor genetics. And the dreams you've been having aren't really dreams. They are genetic memories, information encoded in your DNA that's starting to activate. Your parents left files, research notes that we've been analyzing. According to them, as you mature, you'll start accessing more of those memories. You'll know things the progenitors knew. You'll be able to do things they could do. She pulled something from her pocket, a small data chip. These are your parents' research files. Everything they learned about the progenitors, about you, about what they hoped you could become. I'm giving them to you because you deserve to know the truth about where you came from. But Cole, you need to understand something. The moment that council session ends, your life is going to change completely. Some very powerful people are terrified of you, and fear makes people dangerous. Cole took the data chip, feeling its weight in his palm. What do you think I should do? Julie smiled, but it was sad. I think you should prepare yourself. Because ready or not, the galaxy is about to find out that humanity's abandoned orphan is actually the heir to the greatest civilization that ever existed. And nothing is ever going to be the same again. That night, alone in his room, Cole loaded his parents' files and started reading. He saw their faces for the first time, saw videos of them working in laboratories, exploring ancient ruins, piecing together the truth that the council had hidden. He saw the moment they found each other, two brilliant minds realizing they could create something impossible together. And he saw their final message, recorded just hours before they died. His mother's face filled the screen, tears streaming down her cheeks. If you're watching this, then you survived. You grew up. And son, we are so sorry for what we've done to you. We gave you an impossible burden because the alternative was watching the galaxy burn. But please know that every choice we made out of love. You are not a weapon. You are not an experiment. You are our son, and you are humanity's greatest gift to the stars. Cole watched until the file ended, his own golden eyes reflecting in the dark screen. Outside his window, he could see the vast expanse of Council Prime Station, millions of beings from hundreds of worlds, all living their lives completely unaware that everything was about to change. His dreams that night were more vivid than ever, and for the first time, he didn't fight them. He let the memories come, let himself see what his ancestors had seen. And in those visions, he finally understood what his parents had known all along. The Voidborn were coming, and he was the only one who could stop them. The council session lasted 6 hours, and Cole wasn't allowed to attend. He sat in his room listening to the muffled sounds of argument through the walls, knowing that strangers were deciding his fate. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Julie Norton who walked in. It was 4 security officers in full combat armor, weapons drawn, faces hidden behind reflective visors. Cole Bennett, the lead officer said, his voice flat and mechanical through the helmet speakers. By order of Grand Executive Vincent Carter, you are to be detained indefinitely for the security of the galactic community. You will not be harmed if you cooperate. Cole's heart hammered in his chest. Detained? What does that mean? Where are you taking me? That information is classified, the officer replied. Please stand and place your hands behind your back. Something in Cole's mind screamed at him that this was wrong, that if he let them take him now, he'd disappear into some black site prison and never see daylight again. The genetic memories his parents had unlocked were getting stronger every day, and right now they were telling him exactly how these officers would move, where their weapons were pointed, how long it would take them to fire if he ran. He didn't want to run. He didn't want to be a fugitive. But he also didn't want to spend the rest of his life in a cell because the council was too afraid to let him exist freely. So when the officer reached for him, Cole moved. Later, the security footage would be analyzed by experts across the galaxy, played and replayed in slow motion, trying to understand what they were seeing. Cole didn't fight the officers, didn't hurt them. He simply wasn't where they expected him to be. He slipped between them like water, his movements impossibly fluid, and was out the door before they could even turn around. Alarms blared throughout the station. Blast doors started slamming shut, trying to seal off sections and trap him. But Cole could hear the mechanisms engaging before they moved, could feel the flow of the station's systems like they were extensions of his own body. He ran through corridors that shouldn't have been accessible, climbed through maintenance shafts that his file said he didn't have clearance to know about, and within 20 minutes he'd made it to the civilian docking levels. That's where he found Dr. Nathan Webb waiting for him. Nathan was one of his instructors from the Diplomatic Corps, a human historian who specialized in pre-council civilizations. He was in his 60s, with wild gray hair and the kind of intense eyes that suggested he'd spent too many years staring at ancient texts. Right now, those eyes were focused on Cole with an expression that was equal parts excitement and terror. "I knew it," Nathan said as Cole approached. "I knew there was something different about you from the first day of class. The way you absorbed information, the way you understood concepts that should have taken years to grasp. You're not just human, are you? You're something we haven't seen in 3 million years." Cole stopped, breathing hard from his run. "How did you know I'd come here?" "Because this is where I'd go if the most powerful government in the galaxy wanted to lock me away," Nathan said. He gestured to a small transport ship behind him. "I've been researching progenitor sites my entire career. The council has suppressed most of my findings, called me a crackpot, denied my funding requests. But I knew I was right. And now you're here, living proof of everything I've spent my life trying to prove. So I'm offering you a choice. Come with me, and I'll help you find answers. Or turn yourself in and spend the rest of your life as the council's prisoner." Cole didn't have time to think about whether this was a good idea. Security forces were probably already tracking him. He ran up the transport's ramp, and Nathan sealed the door behind them. 2 minutes later, they were launching from the station, dodging between larger ships and heading for the nearest jump point. "They're going to chase us," Cole said, watching the station shrink behind them. "Oh, absolutely," Nathan agreed cheerfully. "But I've been planning my eventual exile for 20 years. This ship has transponder scramblers, false registry codes, and enough fuel to jump halfway across the galaxy. Plus, I know places the council has forgotten exist. We'll manage." They managed for exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks of jumping from system to system, staying ahead of council pursuit ships, sleeping in the transport's cramped bunks, and going through Nathan's research on progenitor sites. Cole's genetic memories were getting stronger, and sometimes when Nathan showed him images of ancient ruins, Cole could remember being there, remember what the buildings had looked like before time turned them to dust. Then everything changed. They were hiding in an abandoned mining station in the Outer Rim when Nathan's communication array picked up the first reports. A council survey ship had been investigating unusual readings near the galactic edge. The ship had stopped transmitting. A rescue team was dispatched. They found the survey ship, or what was left of it. The hull had been torn apart like paper, the crew simply gone, and the ship's computers showed something impossible. The attack had come from outside normal space, something tearing through from another dimension. More reports followed over the next few days, each one worse than the last. Entire outposts going dark. Colony worlds reporting strange ships appearing in their skies, vessels that looked like they were made of solidified shadow. And then the first major attack hit a system called Hendrix 7, home to 4 billion people across 3 inhabited planets. The Council sent their entire Fourth Fleet to respond, over 300 warships with enough firepower to crack a planet. Cole and Nathan watched the battle through hacked military feeds, and what they saw made Cole's blood run cold. The enemy ships, the Voidborn as his genetic memories named them, moved through space in ways that violated physics. They phased in and out of reality, appearing inside Council ships and tearing them apart from within. Weapons fire passed through them like they weren't even there, and when they fired back, entire ships simply ceased to exist, converted to raw energy and absorbed. The battle lasted 40 minutes. Not a single Council ship survived. Nathan's hands shook as he shut off the feed. 4 billion people, he whispered. Gone. Just gone. And if the council's best couldn't even scratch them, then what chance does anyone have? Cole stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. The genetic memories were screaming at him now, showing him things, ancient battles, strategies the progenitors had used against the Voidborn 3 million years ago. The council can't win because they are fighting the wrong way, he said slowly. The Voidborn exist partly outside our dimension. Conventional weapons can't touch them. You need weapons that can reach into other dimensions, technology that can anchor them in our reality long enough to destroy them. And where exactly would we find technology like that? Nathan asked. The Emperor's Vault, Cole said, and he didn't know how he knew the name, but it was there in his memories, clear as day. My parents found references to it in their research. The last progenitor emperor created a failsafe, a weapons cache hidden in a collapsed star system. It was designed specifically to fight the Voidborn if they ever returned. Nathan pulled up his star charts, fingers flying over the controls. A collapsed star system. That could be anywhere. Do you have coordinates? Cole closed his eyes, reaching deep into the memories encoded in his DNA. Images flashed through his mind, star patterns, navigation markers, mathematical formulas that his conscious mind couldn't quite grasp but his progenitor heritage understood perfectly. I can find it, he said. But Nathan, there's something else. The vault won't open for just anyone. It needs progenitor genetic authorization. It needs me. Then we find it, Nathan said firmly. Because right now, you're the only hope this galaxy has. They were plotting their course when Cole's personal communicator buzzed. He'd kept it off to avoid tracking, but somehow a message had gotten through anyway. It was from Julie Norton, marked urgent and encrypted. Cole, if you're receiving this, then you're still alive and free. Good. The council has issued a warrant for your arrest, but that doesn't matter anymore. The Voidborn have hit 7 more systems in the last 12 hours. The Grand Executor is desperate. He's authorized me to make contact with you. He's willing to pardon you, give you full council authority, anything you want, if you'll help us fight this enemy. Please, Cole. Whatever you think of us, whatever mistakes we've made, there are trillions of innocent people out there who are going to die if we don't stop this. Call me. Cole stared at the message for a long time. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to keep running, to find the vault on his own terms. But he kept thinking about Hendrik 7, about 4 billion people who'd been alive yesterday and were just gone now. He thought about the orphanage on Station Kepler 9, about all those kids from dozens of species who'd never done anything wrong except be born in a galaxy that was now being invaded. We should call her, he said finally. Not to surrender, but to coordinate. If I'm going to find this vault and get these weapons, I'm going to need time. The council needs to slow the Voidborn down, keep them busy, buy me the time I need. Nathan nodded slowly. You're sure you can trust her? Cole thought about Julie Norton, about the sadness in her eyes when she told him about his parents. She's the one who gave me their research files. She could have kept them locked away, but she didn't. Yeah, I think I can trust her. At least more than I can trust anyone else in the council. He sent a reply, brief and to the point. I'll help. But I do this my way. Send me everything you have on Voidborn movements and council defensive positions. And tell the Grand Executor that when this is over, we're going to have a serious conversation about how the council does business. The response came back in less than a minute. Agreed. Data incoming. Cole, thank you. Humanity has given the galaxy many things over the years, but right now, you might be the most important. Don't die out there. Cole smiled despite everything. I'll do my best. He looked at Nathan, at the star charts showing the path to the Emperor's vault, at the reports of Voidborn attacks spreading like a plague across the galaxy. His golden eyes blazed with light that came from something 3 million years old, a legacy he'd never asked for but couldn't deny. Let's go save the galaxy, he said. And the small transport ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying humanity's orphan toward a destiny written in his genes. The collapsed star system wasn't marked on any modern charts. It existed in a region of space that had been gravitationally unstable for millions of years, where 3 stars had collided and torn themselves apart, leaving behind a twisted maze of radiation fields and spatial anomalies that made navigation nearly impossible. Most ships wouldn't survive the journey. But Cole's genetic memories guided them through like he'd made this trip 1,000 times before, and maybe in some way, he had. The Emperor's vault hung in the darkness at the center of the chaos, a structure the size of a small moon that somehow remained perfectly stable despite the gravitational madness around it. It looked like a crystal sphere, its surface covered in the same symbols that had been on Cole's blanket, glowing faintly within a light that had burned for 3 million years. Nathan stared at it through the viewport, his face pale. In all my years of research, all the sites I've explored, I never imagined something like this could still exist. Cole, do you understand what this means? This is actual progenitor architecture, intact, functional. This is the discovery of a lifetime. It's more than that, Cole said quietly. It's the last gift my ancestors left behind. One final chance to fix their mistake. They docked with the vault, and as soon as Cole stepped onto its surface, the structure came alive. Light blazed beneath his feet, racing outward in geometric patterns that covered the entire sphere. A doorway opened in front of them, leading down into depths that shouldn't have fit inside the structure based on its external dimensions. Cole understood immediately. This place existed partially outside normal space, bigger on the inside, built using technology that made physics bend to the will of its creators. Nathan started to follow, but Cole held up a hand. You need to stay with the ship. What's down there? It's key to progenitor genetics. I don't know what it might do to someone else. Cole, you can't go alone. What if something happens? Then you get back to Council Space and tell Julie Norton everything you saw, Cole said. But I'm not going to fail. I can't. Too many people are counting on me. The descent took hours, down through chambers filled with technology that Cole's modern mind couldn't fully comprehend but his genetic memories recognized instantly. Data archives that stored the complete history of progenitor civilization. Weapons prototypes that had been deemed too dangerous to ever use. And everywhere, recordings, holographic messages left by the last progenitors who'd worked here, their final words echoing through the empty halls. At the heart of the vault, Cole found the Emperor's chamber. It was smaller than he'd expected, almost intimate, with a single throne facing a massive display screen. And sitting on the throne, as if waiting patiently for 3 million years, was a skeleton. Not human, not quite, but close enough that Cole felt a strange kinship with it. The last Emperor, who'd chosen to die here rather than abandon his post. When Cole approached, the screen flickered to life, and a hologram appeared. It showed a being that looked remarkably human, tall and graceful with golden eyes that matched Cole's exactly. The Emperor, preserved in light, his final message waiting for someone who would never come. Until now. If you're seeing this, the hologram said, then I was right. The Voidborn have returned, and my people's sacrifice wasn't enough. You must be one of the inheritors, someone carrying enough of our genetic legacy to access this place. I don't know how much time has passed. Centuries? Millennia? Longer? But I need you to understand what we did, and what you must do now. The hologram showed images as it spoke, scenes from the ancient war against the Voidborn. Cole watched his ancestors fight against an enemy that existed partially in dimensions humans couldn't even perceive, an enemy that consumed entire civilizations not out of malice but simply because that's what they were, cosmic predators feeding on reality itself. We couldn't destroy them, the Emperor continued. They were too adaptable, too alien, too vast. Every weapon we used, they eventually learned to counter. So we chose a different strategy. We fragmented ourselves. We took our genetic heritage and scattered it across the galaxy, seeding it into dozens of developing species. The Voidborn feed on biological patterns, you see. They learn to consume specific types of life. But if life becomes too diverse, too varied, they can't adapt fast enough. Unity in diversity became our weapon. The hologram's expression grew sad. We also built fail-safes. Dimensional anchors placed at key points across the galaxy, designed to seal the barriers between dimensions permanently if activated. The Voidborn wouldn't be destroyed, but they'd be locked out of our reality forever, unable to return no matter how long they waited. Cole felt his heart sink. What's the cost? There's always a cost with progenitor technology. As if hearing him across millions of years, the hologram answered. The anchors require enormous energy to activate, energy that must come from a living source. Specifically, they require active progenitor genetics to fuel them. Whoever activates the network will have their genetic heritage completely dispersed, scattered back into the galactic gene pool. The progenitor bloodline will dilute into nothing, becoming background noise in a trillion different beings. The Emperor leaned forward, his golden eyes seeming to look directly at Cole. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we built a weapon that requires this sacrifice. I'm sorry that the burden falls on you, inheritor, whoever you are. But please understand, if the Voidborn aren't stopped, there won't be a galaxy left to save. Everything we were, everything we hope to preserve, will be consumed. The choice is yours. Live as the last progenitor, or die so that everyone else can have a future. The hologram faded, leaving Cole alone in the chamber with a dead emperor and an impossible choice. His communicator buzzed. It was Julie Norton, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Cole, the Voidborn just hit Council Prime. We've evacuated what we can, but they're tearing through our defenses like they're not even there. Casualty estimates are already in the millions. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now. Cole closed his eyes and reached out with senses he was still learning to use. He could feel the Voidborn across the galaxy, could sense their hunger, their absolute alien nature. They weren't evil. They were just doing what they were designed to do, feeding and reproducing. But that didn't change the fact that they would consume everything if they weren't stopped. He thought about the orphanage, about all those kids from different species playing together, learning from each other. He thought about his instructors who'd believed in him despite not understanding what he was. He thought about Nathan, waiting above in the ship, an old historian who'd spent his life searching for truth. And he thought about his parents, Michael and Rebecca, who'd given their lives to create him, who'd hoped he could be the galaxy's salvation. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Cole placed his hand on the throne's control interface, and the entire vault hummed to life. Throughout the galaxy, ancient machines that had slept for 3 million years began to wake up. The dimensional anchors, hidden in asteroid fields and planetary cores and the hearts of dying stars, started drawing power. And the source of that power was Cole himself, his progenitor genetics burning like fuel to seal reality against the darkness. It didn't hurt, not exactly. It felt more like he was expanding, spreading out across impossible distances, becoming something larger than himself. His golden eyes blazed with light that could have illuminated entire solar systems. And he could feel it happening, his genetic heritage flowing out like water, distributing itself across every living being in the galaxy. Every human, every alien, every creature that carried even the tiniest fragment of ancient progenitor DNA suddenly received a little more, a little piece of what made Cole special. The barriers between dimensions sealed with a sound like the universe itself slamming shut. The Voidborn, caught halfway between realities, were pushed back into their own dimension, unable to return. Their invasion ended as suddenly as it had begun. Across the galaxy, people looked up at the sky and watched as the shadow ships simply ceased to exist, fading like nightmares in the morning light. Cole collapsed on the throne, his eyes no longer glowing gold but ordinary human brown. He was still alive, still himself, but fundamentally changed. The genetic memories were gone, the ancient knowledge fading like a dream upon waking. He was just Cole again, just a young man from an orphanage, no longer carrying the weight of 3 million years. Nathan found him there an hour later, unconscious but breathing. He carried Cole back to the ship, and they made the long journey back to Council space in silence, both of them processing what had happened in their own ways. The galaxy changed after that day. The Council was dissolved and reformed with representatives from every species, including humans, who suddenly found themselves elevated to major player status because one of their own had saved everyone. Grand Executive Vincent Carter retired in disgrace, replaced by Julie Norton, who made transparency and cooperation her administration's foundation. But Cole didn't stay for the politics and the celebrations. As soon as the medical teams cleared him, he requested transport back to Station Kepler 9, back to the orphanage that had raised him. The matrons welcomed him home with tears and hugs, and the children mobbed him with questions about his adventures. He took a job as a teacher, working with the youngest kids, teaching them basic skills and more importantly, teaching them that being different was okay, that diversity made them stronger, not weaker. Sometimes former students from the diplomatic corps would visit, asking if he missed it, if he regretted giving up the power he'd had. Cole always gave them the same answer. I didn't give up anything. I shared it. Every person in this galaxy carries a little piece of what the progenitors were now. We're all inheritors, all special in our own ways. I just helped everyone remember that. On quiet nights, Cole would stand at the observation window and look out at the stars, at the vast galaxy full of life and diversity and hope. Sometimes he wondered if traces of the memory still existed somewhere deep in his DNA, if maybe his children would carry fragments of that ancient heritage forward. But mostly, he just felt grateful. Grateful that he'd been given a chance to make a difference. Grateful that his parents' sacrifice hadn't been in vain. And grateful that he'd learned the most human lesson of all, that true strength isn't about having power, it's about knowing when to let it go. The galaxy had been saved by humanity's orphan, the boy with golden eyes who'd chosen to give everything away so that everyone else could have a future. And in the orphanage on Station Kepler 9, surrounded by children from 100 different worlds, Cole finally found what he'd been searching for all along. He found home. Retry.